Hey guys, let's talk about pivot tables. Now, the information I have in front of us here is some fake data that I put together for another project that I was doing with the crisis counselors concerning a Microsoft Power App, which is fantastic, by the way. But let's look at some of this data. Now, this data, again, super double triple fake. It it's kind of hard to read. It's kind of hard to tell like how many kids were at risk and at what campuses were they and that kind of stuff. So we can actually use a really cool tool called a pivot table to examine that data for us. Okay, so it wants to know what table or range, and I think I called this Chrysler. Yeah, I think that was Counselor Data T was the name of that table. And we're going to put this in a new worksheet just so it doesn't muddy up the sheet that we're in now. Click OK. Right, so that was correct. So now we've got this pivot table and we can look at some of this information. Now out here is where the pivot table is going to exist, and over here is how you build it. So what we want to look at is whether or not students were at risk. Okay, and when I click that, it automatically put it here under rows, but we want to look at the number of students that were at risk. So we're going to put it over here in value. So there were, in this case, 13 students, and because we don't have this sorted out at all as yes or no, then that means that it's just showing the total number. So let's look at this per campus. So how many kids per campus are marked at risk? And let's see, we're going to add another at risk to rows, right? So now we've got yes and no for each campus. So Boswell had 3 students, 2 of them were at risk and 1 was not. This is starting to get a little hard to see, right? So let's go up here and put that at risk under filters. See, I've moved it up here to filters. You can move these around. You can look at it in columns or leave it in rows. And under filters, we can click here and select multiple. Get that button down there, and then you can turn on, let's say yes. And now we're just going to, now it's just going to show us how many students were dealt with that were at risk. So you've got some options in here that you can just move things around. Let's see how many. Let's look at semesters also. So how many were done per semester? And it puts let's see. So let's put semesters up here in columns. So now we have the under the rows we've got Boswell, and then first semester and second semester, and then the total. So we can see that there were no at-risk students seen by the crisis counselors at Boswell in the first semester, but there were 2 in the second semester, and so forth. We can go through and we can change this filter again to include all, and so that is looking at all the students now. We don't have to do it by at-risk. We could just do by campus. And now we're looking at total numbers per campus. Let's take that one off. Count of campuses is what we see now. We can take all this other stuff out, and we can mess around with it. Let's stick with campuses and put them under rows. So now you've got 3 students from Boswell, 1 from Creekview, 2 from Eagle Mountain, and so forth, for your 13 total students. If we wanted to move it over by column, you could do that. And then you could add at-risk to rows. So now you've got yes and no in your rows under each one. So if you want to analyze your data, and this is all from this data here, you could go through here and you can use the table filters to see yes and no, but it's a little difficult. It's not super clear. So that's why the pivot table comes in handy. It makes it a lot clearer to see that there were 3 students from Boswell. Two were at risk and 1 was not. There was one student from Remington Point, and that 1 student was not at risk. And you could see here that grand total for the district, there were 8 at-risk students and 5 that were not, and for the 13 total that we're seeing in this data set. So this is what pivot tables will do. And what I like is when it pumps it out into a different sheet, and that leaves it out of the way of your data. It's easy to jump back and forth. It doesn't get in the way of your data, and it's good to go.